First part, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll do it.
All right.
I'm Heather Zykowski, the babe with the power. And coming up next on WAYO LP Rochester is The Sound of Tomorrow, where we're going to be talking about scams. And we have an unshelved mystery. Do you want to do the sound effect, Ross? We have an unshelved mystery for you. But first, we're just going to play the theme because it's summer and our brains aren't really working like brains are supposed to. So, yeah, get ready for something else right after this theme.
Hey, everybody, I'm Ross Johnson, your favorite co-host.
And I'm Heather Zykowski, the babe with the power. Welcome to the Sound of Tomorrow on WAYO LP Rochester.
And let me tell you, what a place to be.
It's a great place to be. It's one of my favorite places.
Do you know, Heather, do you know what special day this is as we're recording?
What special day is it as we're recording?
It's the 8th anniversary of the Obergefell versus Hodges Supreme Court decision that guaranteed the right to same-sex marriage for couples in the United States under the Due Process Clause and the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, with the 5-4 ruling in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and insular areas to perform, etc.
Wow, that's wonderful. 8 years. Holy crow.
So that had a good run.
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
give,
yeah,
we'll give it a
yeah,
decade, but you
yeah.
know.
Wow, yeah. I was in Kentucky when that passed.
Oh, were you
Yeah,
getting married to a same-sex person?
I was not. I was visiting friends, but one identifies as queer, and she was very, very, very excited.
So
And I,
you
of
were with
course,
a
even though I don't identify as queer, I was very, very, very excited as well.
yeah, it's exciting. And you know, long may it be a thing, but I don't give it
Fingers
much
crossed.
I
Well,
mean,
it's pretty much the anniversary of Roe versus Wade being overturned last year. So,
correct.
you know,
Correct.
you
So
know,
really,
you
nothing lasts
know,
forever.
right? we,
Um,
yeah, this time next year, we'll both be sitting here going, well, had a good run.
I don't know. I would love to find out what like young queer people feel about a lot of this, because I mean, I feel like we grew up, me as a queer person, you as a weirdo,
Yeah.
we grew up, you as sort of a gothy weirdo, which is, I
Yeah.
mean, they're
There's a lot
overlaps.
of like overlap in those
Yeah,
communities.
there's intersectionality there. Um,
Absolutely.
because I don't know, I sort of grew up with everybody just hating queer people and assuming it was a bad thing to be queer, and things were not going to go well for you. Like that was just a given, and it was fine. I'm not saying it was fine. It wasn't actually fine. It was objectively terrible. But at least, like, I don't know, because I feel like our attention span's really short, right? And the attention span of
Yeah.
young people is always really short. Anyway, that's not new. That's just you haven't lived a lot of life to have a lot of
Hmm.
experiences, so you think things that are recent. So like 8 years ago to for same-sex marriage to have been a thing for 8 years is like, that is not very long at all, right? But
That
it
feels to me like it was 2 years ago.
yeah. But if
It
you're
feels very recent to me. And that's kind
but
of
it,
when why I was like, 8 years.
yeah, but I mean, like, if you're in college, or if you're at a if you're at an age of, like, your sexual identity awakening times from like 13 to 20 or whatever, anywhere in there,
Hmm.
that is like, you weren't really conscious of when that happened. You know what I mean? Like, you weren't that's not a thing where you were like, oh, there was something different and now it's changed. That's
Yeah,
just
for
kind of always been
example,
that way for you.
yeah, like if you were 10 years old when the law was passed, and now you're 18 years old,
Yeah.
you might not at 10 even have really had much of a thought necessarily. Maybe, I mean, a 10-year-old, I don't know how much they know about US law in general. Like,
Right. They're really
would someone who's 10 years old necessarily know that gay people can or can't get married? Like, would that have come up in their lives, you know?
I mean, from my experience, 10-year-olds are dumb as hell. I mean, just
Well, I'm
dumb.
just thinking like, oh, I'm sure there are some very politically savvy 10-year-olds, don't get me
Well,
wrong.
that's true.
But I'm sure there are also some people who were 10 when the gay marriage law was passed,
Yeah,
um, who do now at 18 years old identify as some form of LGBTQIA. There's got to be
sure.
a percentage that had no freaking clue that when they were 10 years old, it was illegal for them to get married.
Yeah,
And now it's
exact.
legal.
Yeah. Um, so that's an interesting thing because I guess I I feel like there's an older generation that's maybe, I mean, it's crappy and frustrating that you've been through progress and it's gone. So I guess it's different things, right? Like, so it's crappy and frustrating that there was all this progress that now seems like it's being eroded
Mm-hmm.
rather quickly. But then I also feel like there's probably more of a little more of a mental preparedness for for that than for like teenagers now or even people in their early 20s who kind of had there were kind of a few years where it just seemed like everything was kind of fine.
Yeah.
At least we pretended everything was fine, and then that's probably what you maybe that's what you were seeing in life and suddenly I don't know I feel like it's interesting in a
It
bad way.
it's interesting in a bad way. And I somewhat had this experience with Roe versus Wade because as much as I like to claim to be absolutely freaking ancient,
Yeah,
which I am, don't get me wrong.
it's absurd. Yeah,
Yeah, like I'm so old.
it's
I
too
am
much.
not as
It's
old.
enough.
I'm not as old as Roe versus Wade.
That
And
surprises me.
so, right, it's kind of weird. Um, so through my life and through like my young womanhood and you start to think about these things like what if something happens, what kind of medical procedures can I have?
Mhm.
Safe and legal abortion was an option for me. I would have to fight through the protesters and stuff that would also scream at me when I went in for a normal well woman exam. But that was always a right that I could take for granted. I knew it was a federal protection.
Mhm.
And so that was an interesting feeling, even though, given again my status as just an aged crone, like
Yeah.
withered, decrepit, borderline hag, really.
Hmm.
Um, that's not something I would necessarily have to think a whole ton about at this point in my life.
Yeah.
That protection was taken away.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it felt bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see what you mean about there are people who I'm sure have the perception that, oh, it's been my entire life that gay people could get married, which is not true. Well, I
Right.
guess people who were not born, but these people are still children and,
And if they're 7.
8-year-olds, 7 and
Yeah.
8-year-olds, someone who turned 8 today, like,
Right. Is probably not thinking about marriage.
what? Who the heck knows? But again, I would say
Right.
that that's a rare case that there's a little 7-year-old going like, my entire life, gay people have been able to get married. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so it's very interesting that you bring that up, and I certainly hope that it doesn't come to pass that your protections are repealed.
Well, and even I mean, I think there's yes, I hope that too. I think there's that's almost at the that I mean, it would be terrible if that happened for me and a lot of other people and pretty much everybody. I mean, I think, you know, I believe that, you know, anyone who doesn't I believe that any lack of justice for anyone is a lack of justice that impacts us all. So, I think it's bad for everyone if that happens.
Mhm.
But also I almost feel like marriage equality is like it's almost like we have to move it to the a little further down on the list at this point when we're seeing existential threats. I mean, we're seeing, threats
Yeah,
of violence. We're seeing, particularly for trans people, we're seeing like efforts to erase their existence.
yeah,
So which I think is more, you know, I don't want to have to choose one, but that's almost more existential. The idea that the existence of trans people is being threatened.
right. Yeah,
Um,
like whether a human being themselves is allowed to exist versus whether like a relationship status is allowed to exist. I guess
Yeah,
we have to try to save the human life first.
right. I don't want to have to choose.
No,
Um,
we shouldn't really. I mean, what kind of world is this where this is actually a discussion
yeah.
to have
And I
that's
would
not some weird late night hypothetical like what if they banned trans people? It's like, oh no.
and I would say I don't, I would say I don't want to have to choose, and just to carry it a little further, I'm not going to choose, as we've seen a lot of cisgender gay men having decided, not just gay men, gay women as well, having decided that, trans people are worth throwing under the bus. Because of course, then, if you just throw trans people under the bus, then they won't come for us, which is clearly worked out really well. I mean, we started with this whole turfism thing and going after trans people, and you had people going, well, you know what, let's throw the trans people under the bus. They won't come for us. That's really worked out really well. So, as if it's not bad enough that they're coming for trans people, and you can't just on those terms go, wow, that's terrible. Let's not let that
Mhm.
happen. Um, the whole strategy of, well, if we do that, then they won't come for us, that's worked
Yeah,
out really well. I think that's been really
sure,
effective.
sure,
Yeah,
it's
that's been a
been
great
great.
strategy. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's absolutely worked. Yeah, good job.
Yeah.
good, good job, everybody.
Oh,
Anyway, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm doing
What's going on with
stuff.
you? Yeah, you doing stuff?
Yeah, a little bit of stuff, not too much stuff.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, just hanging out. So, what I've actually been doing a lot is thinking again about one of my, I guess I don't want to say favorite topics to discuss. I find it fascinating. I also find it's horrible that these exist, but I've stumbled across a couple more scams that I want to talk about.
Ooh, so this is news you can use. These are some scams you might be
Yeah.
able to pull if you need a few extra dollars.
So,
Is that is that the is that the is that what we're doing here?
that's what Ross will be taking away from this. What I'm trying to offer is please watch out and make sure you know who you're talking to out there. Because there are a lot of people out there who are really trying to manipulate people into giving them lots of money.
Well, I don't like it, but okay.
So, as you know, I still play those word games, and I've
Are
got
you
a
still
nick.
getting propositioned via your word games?
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Um,
I love it. Okay.
so finally, and I would just caution against this because I think I mentioned months ago that there is this guy who had been pretending to be like an older white dude. And then he's like, oh, I need to come clean. You know, I'm a 22-year-old Black man living in Nigeria and I'm studying for college and I'm in love with you.
Yeah,
And so I started, talking about my grandson and whatnot.
right.
Um, this scammer obviously is still trying to get in touch with me.
Oh my God.
And so I do the little breadcrumbing thing. But finally, months later, he was like, oh, you can still give me some assistance. So I was like, oh, yeah, here we go. And I was like, assistance, really? What kind of assistance? Help paying his tuition.
Oh, that's pretty good.
He's a nice young man.
That seems like
Takes his
I mean,
studies very seriously.
that seems like a that seems like a very reasonable request, actually. I think education's important.
That's, that's the darn thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so insidious. And the patience that this individual or group of individuals, I can't figure out if this is actually just one person or a team.
Yeah.
I
So you're gonna
This person has invested months in trying to get some kind of money out of me.
Yeah, and I've not invested months in you like the entire time I've known you. So that's fascinating.
You
Well, okay, fine. So you're gonna give him money?
no,
Okay.
no. And now I'm asking him, how dare he try to bilk an old lady out of her pension?
Um, so he's invested months in you, but also you have not blocked this person. So you're investing a lot in this as
Yeah,
well.
but you know what? He's also still playing Scrabble, which is my point of being there.
So how is he with Scrabble?
Not very good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his
Like
studies aren't paying off.
like so bad that it's obvious that he's not there for the Scrabble, or just like not that great?
Kind of so bad that it's obvious he's not there for the Scrabble.
Okay.
That is another way you can tell in the word games.
Interesting.
Like there is a difference between I am simply playing this so that you get the notification that it's your turn to play,
Yeah.
or I'm playing this, but I'm really just not very good.
So how does it work with that? So do you like, is it always one on one, or is it you against a random somebody, or
Yeah, because all of these things are like with friends. It's if you're
yeah.
in the app, you can choose someone like at random.
Okay.
I don't, I do not know how this person found me and started a game. But
Yeah.
often if I'm like in the Scrabble app, I'll just play the games. Like I don't really care whom I'm playing.
So do you think that Scrabble online players who play Scrabble alone in their homes is I'm asking this for a friend, is a lucrative market for
Well,
scammers?
that's what I worry about. Because like we spoke about with the oil rig scam, what they try to get you to do is go to another platform. So
Hmm.
you don't stay in Scrabble. And so they do the insidious thing of like, I'm in love with you. My dear, I'm not on this app very often. Could we please go to WhatsApp where we can speak more freely and more often?
Yeah.
And so you go over there. And then there's the requests, can you buy me this? Can you give me that? But I have yet to go to another platform.
Okay.
So I don't really know how that goes except for Googling around like what happens when you leave Words with Friends or Scrabble or wherever you're playing.
So interesting.
Yeah, they try
All
to get
right.
you to go somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, I guess something like a WhatsApp is freer and less restricted, right? Because then they can like just get you anytime.
Right. And they don't
Yeah.
have to go through the thing and manage to ping you through the game and whatnot.
They don't have to pretend they don't
They
have
don't
to
have to
pretend to play
pretend that they like to
Scrabble.
play Scrabble.
That's
But
fascinating.
so that's the update on my apps ones. And also I have heard tell, I don't think I've encountered this on the dating apps, the scammers are out there now. And I see sometimes on social media just people posting like a picture of a profile and saying like this is all stock images, this guy has taken my mom for $5,000,
Yeah.
beware.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I can relate in that I get a fair bit of um I am the king of thirst traps. So I
You
get a
are,
lot
it's
of,
true.
especially on Instagram, not so much on Twitter for some reason.
Okay.
Like people run into all sorts of stuff. I mean, people run into all sorts of stuff on Twitter all the time, and I sort of don't, and I don't know why. But like on Instagram, I get a lot of that. And there was a guy who, I say a guy, I mean, this is like, when I say a guy, there was a like a network of whatever that was using
Mhm.
this line, but like because we'd
Yes.
sort of, people that I know would sort of compare notes about like the weird note, and they would be like, and I don't know where the scam goes, because unlike you, I'm just sort of like, okay, whatever, block. But it was like, it was about how they wanted to be my sugar daddy.
Yeah.
And I think the first time I responded, I thought it was a real person, but I was like, I'm not really going to interact with this person because I am not looking for a sugar daddy.
Hmm. Why
um,
not?
well, it's a good question. Um, but the first one, I responded once. I was like, I think I'm a little old for a sugar daddy to be, to have a sugar daddy. Um, and he responded like it was a human being, because he responded with something like an appropriate response to that. But I don't know. So yeah, and I compared notes. Like I said, I had some friends who got the same note over a period of time. I assume it was not the same person, and I don't think it was someone who was actually like. I mean, there's a lot of like, I say gay stuff. I don't know. I just know about gay stuff. There's a lot of like weird, people are into weird stuff. And I guess that's not just a gay thing, people are into weird stuff. So like, I'm sure there are people out there whose kink or fetish or whatever is to like take care of someone even if it's someone, in my case, I think I was older than this person was supposed to be.
Huh.
uh, which is not, that's possible. I guess it's like maybe I'm a sugar daddy, but also like a geriatric sugar baby, maybe? Is that the term for it? Did I just
Yes,
invent that?
that's. I believe that would also be my genre. So if anybody out there looking for a geriatric sugar baby, I'll let you know I'm available.
Like, I mean, I
Hit me
guess
up
maybe
on Scrabble.
I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna find you on Scrabble now. Um,
Ah,
I guess it's maybe if your fetish is like you want to work at the home, and like wash and like clip toenails and stuff. Maybe that's the idea. I don't know. Anyway,
feed people
um,
little pudding cups.
right. I
Sounds
would
pretty nice.
I would consider that actually
Yeah.
if he you know if he had gone to the feed me a pudding cup angle, I might have bitten.
Maybe you could inquire about these specifics. You're like,
True,
are you willing to clip toenails? How many pudding cups per day will you feed me?
because my toenails are very far down. Um.
It's a
Uh.
pain. Maybe that's what I'll start asking this college kid in Nigeria about.
Yeah. I think you should tell them
If
about your toenails.
yeah, exactly. Like, would he file my calluses for me?
I was looking to see if I still had one of these messages, but I think if I block them, they're not there, right? Um. Nancy sent an attachment. Now I'm looking at my blocked messages to see if there's anything weird here. Oh, wait, here we go. I am so bored with my life. Live the mine on my website. They want to click that. That's what's your Cash App tag? I'm gonna send you $1,000. It's my company giveaway time.
Oh boy.
Cites adultos.
Ooh, adult dates.
Yeah. Um, are you going to date me all night? And then
No,
let
I
him
have
go.
to go home and go to sleep.
There are a lot
I'm
of most
old.
of I'm very old. Most of what I get is um and again, it's not that every busty woman with a limited grasp of spoken English is a spammer or a scammer, but that's what I get a lot of, and it'll be like a very busty woman from Connecticut,
Huh.
like a very busty white woman from Connecticut with a very limited grasp of English,
Uh-huh.
um, who, and she'll have a name like Kevin,
Okay.
which again are all things that are completely feasible things, to a combination of
Yeah.
things to have in a human being. But when you get a lot of those, you start to get a little sensitive to the question of like, are you really a woman? Are you really a white lady from Connecticut named Kevin? Or
Well, and
do you just not know that that is not a female presenting name often in the United
mhm.
States?
Well, there is that because I used to get that a lot on Words with Friends. People who would swear that they were from the US. Like,
Hmm.
I grew up in Austin, Texas, but they would have a really strange syntax as though they weren't a
Yeah.
native speaker of English. And
Yeah.
again, I guess there are maybe
Possible.
people who are born right here in the US and raised right here in the US who didn't start speaking English until later in life.
Sure. But
It
it's also not like
seems not
Spanish
nearly as
syntax.
right. No,
Like,
no, no, no.
it's not like it doesn't match up with any commonly spoken language in the United States that you
Yeah,
think someone would grow up here would have like one of them.
right. Yeah, it's just something to look for. And
Yeah.
then some of the other scams that I wanted to get into today, I read
Oh
this
yeah.
on NPR, and there's a phone scam going around that sounds incredibly frightening.
Oh, I might have heard
And
about this. But
yeah,
go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
so it was a Monday in the middle of the day when Valeria Haido got a phone call from a number she didn't recognize. She doesn't normally pick those up, but she did that day. The caller said his name was Officer Robert Daniels from US Customs and Border Protection, and he had a warrant for her arrest.
Oh.
And so I'll try to sum this up. So then the guy told Valeria, Valeria, I don't know, told the woman that she could Google his name and department. And so she did.
Mhm.
And okay, yeah, that was the right name. And
Which that's easy to kind of back into, like
yeah,
if you're
but they managed to keep her on the phone for
Mhm.
about 3 hours. And then
three
they were,
hours.
I know, right? Um, there's all this stuff about like, oh, well, we need to transfer you to agent so and so. You can verify that person's identity on the internet. She looked it up. Yep, verification. And they they like get you really riled up. They started saying that she had illegal property and they had drug warrants for her and that she was going to go to jail. And they make it sound very scary. So your brain is all like flooded with all of these panic chemicals because you think it's real.
Yeah.
And luckily they started asking her, it was for something weird like iTunes gift cards. Um yeah, so then they finally connected her with someone who said that she was a victim of identity theft. Then they said that she had to protect her identity and secure her bank account. And so then they connected her to the police. And again, New York's accent, the name and phone number all checked out when she was checking them. Um, but what did they start asking her for? I'm sorry, I should have definitely. Oh, they were going to send her a QR code and she was going to be able to put all of her money into a digital currency ATM
Oh my
to
God.
secure it temporarily. And that was when she started feeling like that wasn't right. The digital currency thing made her leery. And then she
Yeah.
asked for a police officer to escort her to the bank, but they couldn't send anyone. The more she pushed back, the more urgent they became. They told her if she didn't act that day, her bank account would be immediately frozen and she wouldn't be able to access her money for anywhere between 6 months and 3 years. And the woman said, I got very nervous and I cried. How do I even trust anything at this point? But after 3 hours, she hung up and she was really scared. And she did kind of believe that she might be in this trouble. But when she woke up in the morning, all of her money was there. Her accounts weren't frozen or anything. So it turns out her gut instinct to not do the digital currency
Yeah.
was correct.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
well, I looked up some stuff about how to know and how to prevent yourself from falling for this stuff.
okay.
And so I found a thing from the Federal Trade Commission, and it's an actual pamphlet. Because I was going through my head, I was like, how would you know? Everything's checking out. You're Googling these real people. The accents all sound right. They
Well,
say you're going to
okay.
talk to someone in Texas.
If
Then you
someone,
talk to
but
someone in Texas.
you have to give yourself, I mean, you do have to kind of like, I realize there are people more susceptible to these things than not, but I mean, if someone's giving you proof that something they could have just looked up before, I mean, like, I am not going to, like, don't accept as proof something that someone could have just looked up before, like, oh, I'm from CVS. You can go online and see the CVS store. I mean, that's like, or they could, like, if someone can look up the name of a police officer online, like if you can look
Mm-hmm.
up the name of a police officer online, then someone else could have looked. So if someone's like, here's the undeniable proof, and it's literally not proof of anything, like that's a good time to be suspicious, I think,
It
because
is a good time to be suspicious. It is also scary because I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus here. All of the names I've ever used have been very, 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 very common. And back in the day, I used to get actual collections calls,
Mhm.
but they weren't for me. But it was very scary because the people were very threatening. And when I would say things like, oh, you're not looking for me, they'd be like, we're not. Well, tell us about this. And very luckily for me, it was always a weird thing like, we're calling about your Macy's card. And I'd be like, I don't have a Macy's card. They'd be like, yes,
Yeah.
you do. Which again made me think maybe someone had taken one out. Like, as me, you know? So it gets scary. So I'm not going to say that anybody's foolish for for letting this kind of stuff affect them, which is
No,
why I wanted to talk about it, because it's so insidious and it's so preying on human insecurities, human trust, human fear.
it is. I mean, to some extent for me, like I just sort of don't trust anything that happens on the phone.
Well,
Um,
there are a couple tips I have just off the top of my head. I
sure.
don't answer numbers that I don't recognize.
Yeah, same here.
And then when it turns out it was someone I'm supposed to know, I put them in my phone as a contact.
Hmm.
So then, like when the auto shop calls, I'm not looking at my phone with suspicion. I understand who's calling me.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel like that's a pretty good start, because if it is someone, well, then they'll probably leave a message or they'll text you
Yeah.
or something. You know, like if somehow it were you calling me from your work phone instead of your cell phone,
Yeah.
you would
I wouldn't,
probably leave a message saying it was you.
yeah, and I wouldn't expect you to pick up.
Yeah.
If I were
Um,
also if I were trying to arrest you, I probably wouldn't call you and talk to you about it.
well, another another thing I've heard can work is you say you're going to call them back. Like, especially if a company calls up and they're saying you have an unpaid bill or something, call them back, call the real company.
Yep.
And if there really is a problem, someone at the real company that you contacted, they'll let you know about it.
And that's a good, that's good advice for all sorts of that's good advice for email stuff too. Like when you get an email thing that you're not sure about, from the, oh, you owe us, you haven't paid your bill or whatever, or there's a problem with your account. Don't click on the link they send you.
Yeah.
Go to the actual website
Yep.
and log into your account that way, as opposed to clicking through the link and then putting in your credentials. So now they have your bank information.
Right. Yep.
So that's a good advice in a lot of circumstances. Or like maybe I will call back the police to find out if I'm really under arrest,
Uh-huh.
because if some of the situations I think that are attempted as far as scamming people are so extreme that like, they try to put you in such an extreme mind space, but I think you have to stop and go, okay, if this is really so dramatic, like you're just going to come and arrest me or what? You know what I mean? Like me getting off the phone right now is not going to I'm still going to find out about this.
Right. Like these
Like,
charges in my name aren't going to go away if I stay on the phone.
right.
Yeah. I mean, even I'm sure something like if you're afraid of them or something, say that you need to call your lawyer
Hmm.
and hang up, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
I think, a good policy is to try not to let yourself get pressured into, I think there are a few circumstances I think there are a few real circumstances where like the police or a company or whatever is going to try to trick you into doing something, right? Like, oh, if you don't do this second, you're like, if you don't send us an iTunes gift card immediately, we're going to come arrest you. Like, I don't,
yeah.
I think it's I don't know. I think it's good to try to be aware of that moment of pressure and go, wait a minute.
Yep. And
Is
that
this
is item number 3 in the
oh
How to Avoid a Scam pamphlet from the FTC. Scammers pressure you to act immediately. They want you to act before you have time to think. If you're on the phone, they might tell you not to hang up so you can't check their story. They might threaten to arrest you, sue you, take away your driver's or business license, or deport you. They might say your computer is about to be corrupted. All those things. The thing that is really creeping me out, I didn't find much about this, but there are new voice spoofs.
yeah.
And I do wonder what would happen if, for example, late at night, I just decided to pick up an unknown number. And it's, for
Mm,
example, your voice telling me that you're in jail and I need to wire you X amount of dollars as bail.
yeah. Which I would
That
do.
I know.
Um,
But the number of times you freaking called me from jail late at night, that's why
right.
I'm using it as an example here,
Right.
because that's something that happens with enough frequency that, I'm
Well,
generally somewhat at night I'm generally kind of, I keep an eye on the phone because I just figure like it's pretty likely
Yeah.
you're gonna need me to bail you out for something.
Well, and I've heard examples of that, or I don't know if these were actual examples or just potential examples of like spoofing the voice of a daughter who's in crisis or something like that, where
Yeah,
like that's a situation where I could see.
you do anything.
Right. And that's where, again, that's definitely insidious. I mean, some of the other stuff, and I'm not trying to minimize, the susceptibility of people, or, these are tried and true things that people do because they work on human psychology. So I'm not, but there are, I think, if you're aware that scammers exist, and if you're kind of aware of the tricks scammers use, there are a lot of ways to get around. Again, if someone calls and says like, "Hi, this is the police. We have a warrant for your arrest." I'd be like, "All right, come and arrest me." What am what are we talking on the phone about? Like, um, because that's just, I would be like, "Why would you call me about that?"
Yeah. I was like, do you need me to come down? Like, you can't give me a ride?
Right.
Like,
Um, so or oh, you've won a lot of money, and those are these common scams. It's if you're kind of aware of them, I think it's sort of
yep,
easy
that's number
to.
two. Scammers say there's a problem or a prize. They might say you're in trouble with the government or you owe money. Someone in your family had an emergency or there's a virus on your computer. Some
Mhm.
scammers say there's a problem with one of your accounts that you need to verify some information. Others will lie and say you won money in a lottery or a sweepstakes, but have to pay a fee to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like if it's not actually you legit calling me from jail, I feel like that one would work until you told me that I had to pay bail in iTunes gift cards,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Because I think that's another way that maybe with the really strange ones that might actually get someone, the panicked daughter calling from an unknown number
Hmm.
saying that she's in a jam. Like, how does she want you to send money? Like, can
Right.
you Venmo her?
Yeah.
Because if she's your daughter, I mean, likely you'd have like her PayPal or Venmo or something like
Right.
that.
Right.
But if you've got to send it to some weird crypto mine or scan some car, some code that she's going to send you, like as much as that would be, I'm sure, and honestly, I would be terrified if I heard your voice frantic on the phone begging me for help.
Yeah.
With any luck, I would have the thought to go like, do you have your cell phone? I'm going to call you back at your number
Some of the
or
stuff.
offer to
Yeah.
send you the money, like whatever payment. I know I have payment transfer stuff for you somewhere, but I'll send it to your account instead of
Yeah.
how they say I've got to send it.
And I guess some of the most extreme scenarios are like, they're the most concerning, but also like it's a lot more work. I mean, so I think probably therefore less likely. I mean, it's easy to like cast a wide net,
Mm-hmm.
but to be like, I'm going to create a spoof of, I'm gonna like, I know Heather well enough that I'm gonna create a spoof
Yeah,
of her friend Ross's voice so that he can call. I mean, that's a lot of
that's
work.
a lot of work and that's a lot of having to know specifically who you and I are,
Yeah. That's like
which
literally that
means
would,
like a lot of listening to Wayo. Like,
and probably is just me at that point. And it's
yeah,
probably actually just my voice, and I probably just need some iTunes gift cards. So,
well, I'll get them for your birthday, so you're gonna have to wait.
all
Otherwise, I
right,
think I could probably Venmo you.
that's fine.
But yeah, the calling back is a good one. Like if someone calls and says that they're someone that you're supposed to know,
Yeah.
well, why aren't they on their phone? Why? What I do wonder with spoof numbers, if by chance someone was spoofing your number and somehow I can't even imagine what kind of like randomness generator this would be, somehow
Mhm.
managed to call me, would you pop up as you if it were a spoof
Um,
number?
yeah, I don't know
Do
how
you
that
know?
works. I don't,
I
no
couldn't
idea.
find that out. And I tried with Google search terms like, if my friend's number gets spoofed and my friend tries to call me, does it show up as my friend? That was not an effective search. So
Yeah,
that one I'm
I don't
not
know.
sure about
Mhm. But
because
again, that's
I
like,
do feel like I mean, that's got to be 1 in a million that someone would actually have like a contact that I actually know that I would actually pick up the phone for.
I mean, it's more than 1 in a million,
Yeah.
to happen accidentally. But and if someone knew that much about you, then like you're probably in bigger trouble because
Yeah.
that's someone who really is targeting you.
Right. And for what? I don't have a lot of iTunes gift cards.
You are
I'm
a
sorry, I
great
just
toenail.
don't.
You are a great listen. Do not sell yourself short. You are a great toenail clipper. You're a great put. You're a great pudding feeder. I mean, these
No,
are
no,
all
I'm going to
things.
be eating these things. I'm going to be
Oh,
eating
that's
the
right.
pudding cups and getting my toenails clipped.
I get so mixed up with that. I still don't
Yeah.
know what that particular scam was about. Like I said, unless it was truly just like some guy with a some guy with a kink for paying people's bills. I don't know.
I mean, maybe because you are very handsome. So
True.
it could well have been totally legit. Like he
True.
saw you, he was like, that guy is super hot. I'm going to see.
But he was also hitting up a lot of other people with this. Again, I say he. I don't. I don't know that
He
it was he
purportedly.
because I think when other people were like, "Oh, hey, I got this weird message," I don't think it was from the same person, even though it was the same message. So,
Yeah.
I don't think this was a real person, or at least I don't think it was a single person. But
I mean, it
um,
might have been something trying to get you to go over to WhatsApp, and then you would find out that this person wants to be your sugar daddy from an oil rig.
oh, that's
And
true.
then he needs some iTunes cards to buy things from commissary.
I need to get some I need to get you some fancy toenail clippers
Right. But then
and
once he gets paid, he will be sending you some pudding cups.
right.
I
Right.
think that's probably it. I'm going to buzz through these other little tips here. I've got another scam to
Yeah,
talk about next week, but I think we are running out of time on that because we still have an unshelved mystery.
we
But
do.
number one, scammers pretend to be from an organization you know. They'll pretend to be someone from the government. They might use a real name, like the Social Security Administration, the IRS, or Medicare, or make up a name that sounds official. And some might pretend to be from a business you know, like a utility company or a charity. And the number that you see on your caller ID, we are talking about spoofing, it may or may not be real. Another thing I believe they can do, because a lot of this is such public information, is they might have your name. They might address you by name.
Sure.
That can just be scraped off of the internet so easily off of like whitepages.com. So even if they seem like they know you, they might not know you.
Yeah.
Just another scary thing when they're like, Heather, we want to feed you some pudding cups. And scammers will tell you to pay in a specific way. Cryptocurrency, wiring money through MoneyGram or Western Union, or putting the money on a gift card and giving them the number on the back. And some will say that they're going to send you a check and then you can deposit it and send them the money. It's not good. Don't do that stuff.
Yeah.
You can avoid a scam by blocking unwanted calls and text messages. You can install apps and stuff that can help with spam filters. Don't give your personal or financial information in response to a request that you didn't expect. Honest organizations for real. And they put this in their emails. They won't call, email, or text to ask for your information.
Right.
Like, like your bank isn't going to call you going like, by the way, what was your credit card number?
Yeah.
That, and I've had this happen. There was a problem with a credit card number a while ago. They told me my credit card number.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I believe you are actually who you are because you just told me a lot of stuff about me. And I haven't told you a darn thing. Like, okay, all right. Um, do resist the pressure to act immediately.
Yeah.
Honest businesses won't pressure you like that. And really, like, when someone asks you to pay in a way that seems strange, like wiring money or buying iTunes gift cards, don't do it. And the last tip they have here is stop and talk to someone you trust. Before you do anything else, tell someone, a friend, a family member, a neighbor, what happened. Talking about it could help you realize it's a scam.
Yeah.
Just a few
100%.
good, simple tips from the FTC, but I feel like I can't enforce that enough because I absolutely hate how people out there are taking advantage of people who are just trying to do the right thing. And
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think probably among the best advice there is like don't let yourself be pressured because 99% of the time there's really no, there's never going to be a good reason for it. Like there's
Except when Ross is in jail and he really doesn't
right.
want to spend the night there and he's just insisting
And I
that you pay
really
his
need some,
bail.
and I really need some
Put in
new
cuffs.
music on my phone.
To get him through the night in jail, because goodness knows
Right.
with all the
Right.
money I'm sending to my student in Nigeria, I can't afford to bail him out.
Right. So I just need some iTunes cards so I can have something to listen to. Because otherwise it's just like Big Vinny telling me about
Clipping your
his horse
toenails.
clipping my toenails. Because that's how we wound up in jail. We got caught. Um, I don't know. Yeah, that's all good stuff, Heather.
Yeah, I got excited about it because I was like, this is actually like good information.
Do you want to hear about an unshelved mystery?
I do.
That's me. So the unshelved mystery sound is when I pull the mystery off the shelf, right? And it's
Yeah.
got some dust on it, and I go and I blow the dust off of it.
When I unshelf one, I use the blow dryer. So it goes,
Yeah, that's
uh,
fair. Do people care about Tudor history? I don't know. Should we do this one? Um,
four-door history. What are we talking? Sedans versus coupes.
okay. Um, you
I'm on fire.
your sub dad level humor is not appreciated here.
My sugar
So
daddy loves it.
Heather, so the Tudor history is big right now because there's I saw that Six, the musical, and that's why it's big. But it's so this was interesting. I don't know if this is going to be interesting. I'm just going to preface this was I don't know if this is interesting to anyone else but me, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Are you ready? Here we go.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So come back with me, Heather, to Tudor times,
Okay, I'll go
and
anywhere
we're
with you.
we're like, "Hey, Henry VIII, what you doing?" And he's like, "I'm going to kill my wife." And that's sort of what's so it's I've set the scene.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I've created a milieu. Um the so just recently, so this is sort of the run up to the latest, but um the so just like a few months ago, there had been prayer books. One was owned by Catherine of Aragon, who was the first wife of Henry VIII, and then one was owned by Anne Boleyn, the second wife of Henry VIII, with the slightly more tragic fate than the
Mm-hmm.
first wife of Henry VIII. Um, and they were pretty much the same printing, which is, now that's not, you're like, oh, we have the same copy of Interview with the Vampire. It's not
Yeah,
that big a deal. It's not, it's like, oh, great, you and 30,000 other people. But this was not, there were like, this is not, this print runs
it
in,
was a shorter run.
it was a much shorter run at the time. So these are books of hours, so they're illuminated, meaning that they were basically
Mm.
colorfully illustrated. And these were women of some means, so they were attractively bound and bejeweled and all sorts of things like that. So that's a fun thing. You love that. um, the books were recently displayed together at Hever Castle for the first time. Basically, they were excited because the books had been reunited for the first time in 400 years, 500 years between
Aye.
these two women who were sort of rivals. But so in the process of looking at these books, there was another copy from 1527, like the other two, identical in most respects. They've all been like, they were passed down for a while, all of them. So they were sort
Mm-hmm.
of patched and repaired in different ways and things like that. So there, little differences and little customizations when they were made. But so there's a third copy, and they were just like, here's a third one. It's just sitting around. We don't know what it is. It turns out it's a copy that belonged to Thomas Cromwell, who was Henry VIII's right hand man. Some see as a complete villain. Some see as like just this guy, doing his thing, just trying to live his life. Very complicated, but there are books and books and plays and things like that. So you can learn all about Thomas Cromwell if you care, but very interesting person. As a person who he was the son of a butcher. So he was there weren't a lot of, in Tudor England, there weren't a lot of like people who rose from, there weren't a whole lot of people who rose from nothing. There weren't a lot of new men who came out of nowhere. So interesting for that reason, who
Mm-hmm.
became like sort of the number two man in England from being the son of a butcher. So interesting. But so there's a painting of him by Hans Holbein, who's um a very prominent portraitist in Europe of this time. And if you think of Henry VIII, you're thinking of his picture of Henry VIII. Pretty much all of these figures, like all of their images, are from portraits by him. Um, and in Thomas Cromwell's painting, there's a picture of him with his little book of hours, which they have now, by examining the book, the painting, and sort of the trail of provenance of where the book has been over time. This book was just sitting around. It turns out this is the exact book from the painting of Thomas Cromwell that was painted in the painting of the Thomas Cromwell in the book. So now there are 3 copies of these 3 key figures. You know, 3 of the most key figures of that sort of era of, wives getting killed. Of course, other things going on, depending on, depends on what your interests were, I guess, at the time.
Oh, I want to look these up now. There've got to be
Yeah.
pictures, right?
Yeah, there are definitely pictures, and there's a whole like the History Hit Network, which is a sort of a niche streaming service, but they have a whole documentary about it. But yeah, you can just go online and find pictures. It's it's a pretty book. I don't know. I like a thing with that close of a tie to historical events. Especially, I don't know, the fact that it's in a painting makes it very cool to me.
Yeah,
Like if
that's
they were just
really neat.
like if they were just like, this is Thomas Cromwell's book that we found, it'd still be interesting. Like, that's really cool. But the fact that it's the book that's in a painting that's been sort of rediscovered as what it is, I don't know. I feel like that's a neat thing to me. That's a very
That's
interesting thing to
very
me.
neat. It appears to be in terrific shape, or at least Anne
Yeah.
Boleyn's.
Yeah. I mean, well, and a lot of the stuff too, I mean, I think less so for Catherine of Aragon, who was just around a lot longer, and but with both Anne Boleyn and Thomas Cromwell, they were both people who were sort of maybe, I don't know if disgraced is the right word. I mean, I guess depending on how you feel. I mean, that's a little pejorative for people who probably didn't deserve to have their heads cut off.
Yeah.
But they were, they were people who were, I mean, I use the word disgraced because they were sort of persona non grata, slightly before and after their death. So a lot of their stuff was destroyed, literally, or people sort of squirreled it away because, like, you didn't want to, you didn't want to, be seen,
Mm-hmm.
lovingly caring for your Anne Boleyn stuff, because Anne Boleyn was no longer a popular well, Anne Boleyn was never a popular person. I'm sorry, Anne, it's true. But, she was not someone, if you wanted to either maintain favor in the court, or even just kind of, maybe even just kind of at a certain point keep your keep your livelihood and maybe even your
Mm-hmm.
life, you didn't really want to be seen to be like, oh, I love Anne Boleyn, she's so cool. So the stuff was either trashed because, like, oh, we hate Anne Boleyn. Ugh. Or people would sort of hide stuff away. So, and with Thomas Cromwell, sort of the same situation. So what survives is extra interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah, I
with Anne
hadn't really
Boleyn,
thought about like, ew, gross, icky, get rid of all of her stuff.
like, we don't even really know what Anne Boleyn looked like, because, like, the paintings that exist that might be Anne Boleyn, they were sort of just like, people kept things that at the time they might have been like, oh, this is my painting of Anne Boleyn, I'm keeping it. But it sort of lost the history, sort of lost
Uh-huh.
the thread, because they weren't kept up with a label in the museum that said Anne Boleyn. So there are paintings that, like, might be Anne Boleyn, but we don't really know for sure what she looked like. I mean, even as much as you can tell from a painting, but
Mm-hmm.
all we have are like descriptions, and it was either like really flattering descriptions from people who were trying to be like, hey, I'm trying to get in good with Anne Boleyn, or like really unflattering depictions from people who
Uh-huh.
are like, oh, I hate Anne Boleyn. Puh. So, it's I don't know, it's an interesting period. for the longest time in my life, I've always been interested in history, but I was always like, as white liberal, I was always like kind of too good for like English history. I'm like, I want to learn about African history. That's who I'm. But it really is like, it's a period of time when, like just really fascinating personalities, really fascinating women, and sort of sex and murder and all the things that make for good drama intertwined with politics in ways that, I mean, the religious stuff that was going on at the time with particularly with Thomas Cromwell and Anne Boleyn, I mean, two of the key players there. We're still living in that world. Like we're still living in the world of the religion that they sort of
Hmm.
changed and altered and built. So it's ah, I
And
think
there
it's
is a lot
neat.
there.
There's a lot there.
And you know
That's
where
the
else
story.
there's a lot, Ross? Right here on WAYO LP Rochester. So keep your dials tuned. Ross, I want to thank you. I was in a grumpy mood, and now I'm not in a grumpy mood. You
Well,
have helped me.
I want to
Made me
thank you
feel
for being
better.
in a less grumpy mood.
Yeah, it's been
And you've
good.
made
It
me
was
feel
fun.
better too. We love you, everybody.
Thanks. We do.
Eh?